The stars that whispered our names before the universe forgot them. The stars were always there, ancient, silent witnesses to everything that had ever lived and died. Yet, somewhere between their light and our eyes, something had changed. They no longer sang like they once did. Their whispers, once soft echoes across the cosmos, had faded into the cold emptiness of forgotten time. On a small planet circling a dying sun, a girl named Lyra sat beneath the night sky, listening. She had grown up hearing stories that the stars once spoke to humankind, that they whispered names, memories, and dreams. But now, the sky was mute, its brilliance dimmed by the long silence of ages. Her grandfather, Elden, used to tell her that the universe remembered every soul, that every birth sent a pulse through the galaxies. "We are not forgotten," he'd said, "as long as someone listens." Lyra wanted to believe him. She tried. Every night, sitting in the silver sand of the desert plains, her eyes locked on the horizon where the stars flickered weakly. The people of her village had stopped watching the sky centuries ago. They said the stars had turned their backs. But Lyra still listened. One evening, as the crimson sun bled into the dunes, she heard a faint hum. It was almost like the wind, gentle, trembling, but deeper, like a voice trying to remember how to speak. She froze. The air shimmered, and for a heartbeat, one of the stars pulsed brighter than the rest. She whispered, "Who's there?" No one answered. Only the silence replied. But Lyra knew she hadn't imagined it. That night, she ran home to tell Elden. He was old and frail, his eyes milky with age, but when she told him about the hum, his expression changed. His hands trembled as he gripped her arm. "Did it call your name?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she said. "It felt like it was trying to remember me." Elden nodded slowly. "Then the time is coming," he whispered. "The stars are remembering." Lyra frowned. "Remembering what?" "The names," he said. "The ones the universe buried when it fell asleep. Long before we were born, the stars spoke our names to keep us alive in their memory. But something happened. The universe forgot. Maybe it's trying to wake up." He coughed, his frail body shaking. Lyra helped him lie down, but his gaze stayed on the window, on the single star still visible through the gathering dust storm. "When I was your age," he murmured, "the stars spoke to me too. Just once. I thought it was a dream. But dreams are the language of the universe, Lyra. Never doubt what you hear." That night, she couldn't sleep. The wind outside was restless, the sand whispering like voices too faint to understand. She climbed to the roof of her small stone house and stared up again. The same star pulsed faintly. It wasn't bright or grand, but it called to her. Lyra closed her eyes and whispered, "If you can hear me, I'm listening." A pause. Then, in the quiet of her mind, she heard it, soft, fragile, like a sigh carried by light. "Lyra." Her breath caught. The voice was distant, old, like it had traveled through time just to find her. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Who are you?" The voice answered, not in words but in feelings, warmth, sorrow, longing. She saw flashes of stars being born, galaxies spinning, and a world where people spoke to constellations like old friends. Then it was gone. At dawn, Lyra found Elden asleep in his chair, a book resting on his chest. The book was ancient, filled with drawings of stars and strange symbols. On one page was written, "The stars that whisper our names." Her fingers traced the faded ink. Beneath the title was a line written in smaller letters. "When the last listener hears the first whisper, the universe shall remember again." Lyra's heart raced. The whisper she'd heard, it wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of something. She looked out at the rising sun and made a promise. "I'll find the truth. I'll make the stars remember." That day, she set out to the Observatory of Mirrors, a place where light was captured from distant galaxies. The observatory lay in ruins, half buried under centuries of dust. The people said it was cursed, that those who entered never returned. But Lyra was not afraid. She felt guided by something older than fear, something that hummed inside her chest like a song waiting to be sung. The journey took her 3 days. She crossed deserts where the wind howled like lost souls and mountains where the skies seemed to lean closer. On the third night, she reached the observatory, a vast dome of shattered glass, reflecting the faint glow of the stars above. Inside, broken machines lay silent. The air smelled of metal and forgotten dreams. Lyra climbed the highest platform and looked through the largest mirror still intact. When she peered into it, she didn't see her reflection. She saw stars moving, slowly, like living things, pulsing in rhythm. Then, faintly, words began to appear, written in the starlight. "We remember you." Lyra stepped back, trembling. The voice from before echoed again, clearer this time. "Lyra of the last light, you have heard us. We remember your name." She whispered, "Why me? Why now?" The stars flickered, and she felt sorrow like a weight pressing against her heart. "Because the universe is dying," the voice said, "and only memory can save it." Lyra stood beneath the endless sky, her heart pounding. The stars pulsed brighter now, as if awakening. Somewhere deep in space, ancient memories stirred. Memories of names, of lives, of all that had once been loved and lost. The universe was remembering, and Lyra was its first listener. Lyra stood on the broken floor of the old observatory, her eyes wide as the stars shimmered through the cracked dome above her. The voice that had called her name lingered like a fading echo inside her thoughts. She felt both terrified and alive. The silence that followed was deep, almost sacred. Then, the stars flared once more, their light swirling into patterns that moved like slow waves across the sky. It was as if the heavens themselves were breathing. She whispered, "You said the universe is dying. What does that mean?" The voice returned, soft but clear now, vibrating through the walls and mirrors. "Time has forgotten its own reflection," it said. The universe was built on remembrance, each star, each soul, each dream bound together by memory. But when the last voice of remembrance fell silent, everything began to fade. Lyra swallowed. "And you're saying it's fading away now?" "Yes," the stars whispered. "Galaxies collapse not because of age, but because no one remembers their stories. Light dies when no one listens." She looked up, her heart breaking at the thought. "Then why did you call me?" A long silence, then a soft hum filled the air. The mirrors began to glow, showing shapes, silhouettes of beings made of light, stars burning in their eyes. "Because you still listen," said the voice. "And you carry the memory of the first whisper." Lyra blinked. "The first whisper? Who's that?" "The one who first heard the stars," it replied. "Long before your world was born. Every listener after her carried a piece of her memory, and now, that memory lives in you." The words left Lyra trembling. Her hands brushed against the nearest mirror, and suddenly her vision blurred. The observatory vanished. She found herself standing in another world, a vision of the past. She saw a woman standing on a glowing plain under a sky bursting with newborn stars. The woman's hair flowed like light itself, and when she spoke, her voice rippled across galaxies. "I hear you," the woman said softly. "I remember every name you have spoken." Around her, the stars responded, glowing brighter. Lyra could feel the warmth of that connection, like the entire universe was alive and aware. Then, everything shifted. The light dimmed. The woman's voice began to fade. The stars grew cold. "Do not forget us," the woman's last whisper echoed before the vision shattered. Lyra gasped and stumbled backward, finding herself once again inside the ruined observatory. The stars above were dim again, but the echo of the woman's words lingered inside her heart. She whispered to herself, "She was the first whisperer, and she's gone. Forgotten." "Not gone," the voice replied gently. "Sleeping. Waiting for remembrance to awaken her." Lyra pressed her hand against her chest. "How can I do that? How can I make the universe remember?" The voice flickered through the air like starlight breaking apart. "You must find the archives of light. There, the forgotten names are kept, the souls erased from memory when the silence began." Lyra frowned. Where are these archives? Beyond the veil of dark matter, the stars said, where light bends back upon itself. Few have gone there. None have returned. Lyra smiled faintly. Then I'll be the first. The voice hesitated. You carry courage like she did. Lyra spent the next few days repairing what she could of the observatory. Using its old instruments, she charted the direction of the brightest pulses in the sky. She found a pattern hidden within the light, a pathway of flickering stars forming a spiral leading outward, far beyond the edges of her galaxy. Each night, the stars whispered more fragments of forgotten language to her. Old names, lost worlds, fading dreams. She began writing them down in her grandfather's journal, filling page after page with glowing symbols that appeared under moonlight. One evening, as she prepared her journey, she heard Elden's weak voice behind her. You're leaving, he said softly. Lyra turned, startled. Grandfather, you shouldn't be out of bed. He smiled faintly. I've been waiting to hear those whispers again. I thought they'd forgotten us forever. His gaze lifted to the stars above. Go, Lyra. Go find them. Remind them who we are. Lyra hugged him tightly. I will. I promise. She left at dawn aboard an old skyship, a relic powered by starlight collectors. As it rose above the atmosphere, she watched her home grow smaller beneath her until it was just a glowing among billions. Ahead of her, the stars opened like a map, each point of light humming faintly, as if guiding her towards something vast and ancient. Days passed, then weeks. She drifted beyond the reach of known space, where stars grew sparse and silence pressed close. There were no signals, no planets, no warmth, only the endless dark. And yet, in that stillness, she heard them again. Lyra, the whisper was joined by others, soft, broken, desperate. Voices of countless stars, overlapping like a forgotten choir. Find the vault. Find the memory. Bring us home. She followed the sound until the ship's sensors detected a distortion ahead, a shimmering barrier of light and shadow twisting endlessly. The veil of dark matter. It looked like a river of black glass, bending light around it in strange ripples. Lyra felt her heart pound. This was where the stars had told her to go. She set the ship's course straight toward it. As she crossed the boundary, everything changed. The light outside bent and slowed, colors stretched into strange patterns, and she felt as though she were falling. Not through space, but through memory itself. Inside the veil, there was no time. Images and echoes surrounded her, moments from forgotten worlds, people calling out across centuries, names spoken by voices she didn't know. She saw planets forming, stars dying, civilizations rising and fading like waves. Each image carried a feeling, love, loss, hope, all merging into a sea of remembrance. Then, out of the glowing mist, a figure appeared. It was the woman from her vision, the first whisper. But now, her light was dim, flickering like a dying flame. Lyra, the woman said softly, her voice trembling. You found me. Lyra stepped forward, eyes wide. You're real. I was, the woman said, smiling faintly. Once. I was the voice that bound the stars together. But when the universe began to forget, I became nothing but a memory. Lyra felt tears in her eyes. They said only memory can save it. What does that mean? The woman looked at her sadly. The universe survives through connection, through remembrance. Every life, every story, every dream echoes in the light of the stars. But when we stopped listening, it began to fade. Lyra reached for her hand, but her fingers passed through like mist. What do I have to do? She whispered. The woman's eyes glowed faintly. Carry the names. Speak them. Make the universe remember again. The stars outside pulsed, as if echoing her words. Lyra could feel their rhythm beating in her chest. The first whisper faded slowly, her voice growing distant. When the last listener remembers the first whisper, she said, the universe will awaken. And then she was gone, her light scattering into the void. Lyra stood alone, surrounded by the endless sea of memory. She opened her grandfather's journal and began to write, her pen glowing with starlight. One by one, she wrote the names she heard, millions of them, each a heartbeat of the cosmos. As she wrote, the stars began to shine brighter beyond the veil. The whispers returned, stronger, clearer. We remember, we remember. Lyra smiled through her tears. The stars were waking up. Lyra drifted through the veil of dark matter, her skyship glowing faintly in the swirling sea of memory. Around her, fragments of light pulsed like beating hearts, each one a lost name, a forgotten story. The journal in her hands shimmered with every word she wrote, pages alive with the language of the stars. She didn't know how long she had been there. Time no longer made sense. Her ship floated through dreams and echoes, and sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she could see the lives connected to each name she wrote down, faces smiling, hands building worlds, voices singing to the night. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. But as she wrote, something strange began to happen. The more names she remembered, the heavier the ship became, as if each word carried a piece of the forgotten universe within it. The engines groaned under invisible weight. Lyra frowned. "What's happening?" A faint voice answered, one of the stars themselves, now strong enough to speak clearly. "Memory is weight," it said softly. "Every story you restore adds gravity to the fabric of existence. But you must keep going, Lyra. The light depends on you." She nodded, even though her hands trembled. "I'll keep going," I promised. Hours, or perhaps centuries, passed. Lyra could no longer tell. At last, the sea of memory parted before her, revealing a massive structure floating in the distance. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, a vast crystalline sphere glowing with threads of energy that stretched across space like veins of starlight. "The Archives of Light," Lyra gasped. "I found it." As her ship approached, voices echoed from within, thousands of whispers calling her name, overlapping like a chorus. She felt a shiver run through her. The sound was not frightening, but it carried unbearable sorrow, like every soul trapped inside was begging to be remembered. The ship landed softly on a platform made of translucent stone. Lyra stepped out, clutching the journal close. The air shimmered with golden motes that drifted like dust. In the distance, a towering door carved with constellations slowly opened, as though welcoming her home. Inside, endless corridors stretched out in every direction. Shelves of light lined the walls, each holding a sphere that glowed faintly. Lyra reached out and touched one, and the moment her fingers brushed its surface, she saw a memory unfold before her eyes. A planet of blue oceans. Children playing under twin suns. Laughter echoing across a silver shore. Then darkness. Silence. The sphere dimmed again. "These are the worlds the universe forgot," Lyra whispered. A figure appeared at the far end of the corridor, tall, made entirely of light, its form shifting between human and star. Its voice was deep, resonant, like the hum of galaxies turning. "You carry the echoes," it said. "You are the listener of the last era." Lyra's heart pounded. "Who are you?" "I am the keeper of the archives," it replied. "I protect what remains of the remembered universe." "Then you know why I'm here," she said. "The stars want to wake. They want to remember everything." The keeper bowed its head. "Then you carry both hope and danger." "Danger?" "The universe forgot for a reason," the keeper said slowly. "Memory is not only light, it is pain. Every world that died, every soul that suffered, every voice that was silenced, all of it sleeps here. If you awaken it all, you awaken the sorrow as well." Lyra looked down at the glowing journal. "But if I don't, everything fades." The keeper's form flickered. "That is the choice of every listener who came before you. Some chose silence, to preserve the calm of forgetfulness. Others tried to remember, and burned with the weight of what they revived." Lyra's voice trembled. "What would happen if I restore everything?" "The universe will live again," the keeper said softly, "but it will weep." Lyra closed her eyes. She thought of her grandfather's words, of the nights she spent listening to the silent stars. She remembered how lonely the sky had felt, how wrong it was for something so infinite to be so quiet. "I'd rather the universe weep than disappear," she said finally. The keeper regarded her for a long moment. Then, slowly, it extended its hand. From its palm rose a small orb of light, a key of pure energy. "Then take this," the keeper said, "the heart of the archives. When you release it, every forgotten name will return. But know this, listener, when you awaken memory, you awaken everything." Lyra took the orb. It pulsed gently in her palm, warm and alive. For a brief second, she could hear faint laughter within it, like a billion lives waiting to be born again. She nodded. "I'm ready." Lyra walked to the center of the archives, where a great pool of light shimmered like liquid stars. The air trembled with quiet power. She knelt beside the pool and opened her grandfather's journal. Pages glowed brighter than ever before, their words dancing like constellations. She whispered, "For all who were forgotten." Then she dropped the heart of the archives into the pool. At once, the entire chamber ignited in light. The shelves shook. The orbs of memory burst open, releasing streams of golden fire that shot into the heavens. Voices filled the air, countless voices, crying, laughing, singing. The sound was deafening and beautiful. Lyra fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Every memory, every emotion poured through her. She felt the joy of creation and the agony of destruction, the birth of stars and the death of worlds. It was too much, but she did not let go. "Remember," she cried, her voice breaking. "Remember everything." The stars answered. Across the cosmos, their light flared brighter. Whole galaxies that had faded reappeared in the night. Worlds thought lost began to shimmer again in existence. The silence of eternity shattered. And through it all, Lyra heard one familiar voice whisper softly above the rest. "You did it, Lyra." She looked up. The first whisper stood before her, radiant and whole once more, her light bright enough to fill the chamber. "You remembered me," she said gently. Lyra nodded, crying. "You never should have been forgotten." The whisperer smiled. "None of us should have." But as the light grew, Lyra felt her strength fading. Her body shimmered at the edges, turning translucent. The keeper appeared beside her, its voice somber. "The listener cannot exist apart from the silence," it said. "To bring memory back, you must become part of it." Lyra understood. Her hands trembled, but she smiled. "Then I'll become a whisper too." The first whisperer took her hand. "You will not fade, Lyra. You will join the song." Together, they stepped into the pool of light. The stars above roared with brilliance, their voices rising in a harmony that stretched across galaxies. The song of remembering had begun, and within it, Lyra's voice became one with the universe. Far away, on the small desert planet where she had once listened to the silent sky, Elden awoke from his sleep. The night outside was alive with light, the stars burning brighter than they had in millennia. He smiled weakly, tears glistening in his eyes. He whispered, "She did it." And for the first time in an age, the stars whispered back, "We remember." For a long moment after Lyra vanished into the pool of light, the universe held its breath. Then, like a single heartbeat, the cosmos began to pulse again. Stars that had long gone dark flickered back to life. Forgotten galaxies spun once more. Light spilled through the empty corridors of time, washing over worlds that had been nothing but dust and memory. Everywhere, people awoke from forgotten slumber. Civilizations that had once been lost began to reappear, their histories rewriting themselves in the vast tapestry of space. Planets bloomed again, and the night skies across the cosmos sang with whispers of life. And in every whisper, one name was spoken softly, Lyra. On her home world, the old desert shimmered beneath a sky no longer quiet. Elden stood on the dunes, his silver hair blowing in the wind. The stars above danced and hummed, their music soft and endless. He knew, deep in his heart, that Lyra was gone. But he also knew she was everywhere now. Her voice echoed in the starlight, in the wind, in the hum of the sand beneath his feet. He looked up and whispered, "You found their names, my child." The stars responded with a faint, gentle whisper, and they will never be forgotten again. But far across the reborn galaxies, where light and darkness met, something stirred. In the deepest corners of the cosmos, beyond the reach of any sun, there existed a realm known as the Silent Void. It was the place where all forgotten things went, the graveyard of memories too heavy to bear. As light spread through the universe, the void began to tremble. For every memory restored, a shadow reawakened too. The forgotten pain, the sorrow, the loss, all that had once been sealed within the silence, now rose again. And from that darkness came a voice unlike the others. Cold. Empty. A whisper that carried no warmth. The universe remembers too much. The voice belonged to something ancient, the Eclipser, a being born from the universe's need to forget. It had slumbered for eons, feeding on the silence. Now, as memory and light returned, it awoke in fury. The stars were meant to sleep, it hissed. And silence was my gift to them. The Eclipser began to move, a shadow swallowing starlight. One by one, newly reborn constellations flickered and dimmed as it spread across the heavens, erasing the light Lyra had restored. In the sea of light where Lyra's spirit drifted, she felt the tremor. The star's song, which had been pure and whole, began to distort, notes faltering, whispers breaking. Pain surged through the light. Lyra turned, her form glowing faintly in the vast expanse of memory. Around her, other spirits, voices of the remembered, looked on in fear. The first whisper appeared beside her, her face grave. "The Eclipser has awoken." Lyra frowned. "The what?" "The shadow of remembrance," said the whisper softly. "When the universe chose to forget, it gave form to its own silence. The Eclipser is that silence. It will not stop until all is quiet again." Lyra's heart, though no longer flesh, tightened. "Then I'll stop it." The whisperer looked at her sadly. "It cannot be fought with light or strength. It is made of forgetting. You must find a way to make it remember too." "Make darkness remember?" Lyra asked. "That's impossible." The whisperer placed a hand over her heart. "Nothing is impossible for the one who listens." So Lyra began her journey again, this time not through space, but through the inner fabric of memory. She moved through the currents of the cosmos, where voices of billions echoed in harmony. But the harmony was breaking. Wherever the Eclipser passed, the stars fell silent again, their names dissolving into nothingness. She could feel the pain of those vanishing lights, their voices screaming before being swallowed. It tore through her like fire. She called out into the void, "Eclipser, show yourself." For a moment there was nothing. Then, from the shadows of a dead galaxy, it appeared, a vast form of swirling darkness, its shape shifting like smoke. When it spoke, its voice made the light itself tremble. "You are the one who broke the silence." Lyra floated before it, her glow faint but steady. "I gave the universe its voice back." "You brought back pain," the Eclipser said. "Do you hear them weeping? The stars remember their suffering now. You have cursed them with memory." Lyra hesitated. "Pain is part of life. It means they existed." "Existence is a wound," hissed the shadow. "And I was the bandage." The darkness surged forward, swallowing light in waves. Lyra raised her hands, and the memories she carried burst from her palms, streams of glowing names, faces, laughter. The Eclipser recoiled but did not stop. "You can't destroy memory," Lyra shouted. "I don't destroy it," the Eclipser whispered. "I make it fade." The two forces collided, light and shadow, remembrance and silence. The universe trembled under their clash. Stars flickered violently. Planets shuddered. In the heart of the chaos, Lyra heard the faintest hum, the same melody she had heard as a child in the desert. Her grandfather's voice, soft and distant, echoing from across time. Lyra, listen. Even silence carries memory if you listen long enough. Her eyes widened. She looked at the eclipser again and whispered, "You remember too, don't you?" The shadow paused. "You were born from a universe's need to forget," Lyra said gently. "Which means you once knew everything." The eclipser trembled, its edges flickering. I remember nothing." "Yes, you do," Lyra whispered. "You remember the moment the universe first fell silent. You remember why. Tell me what you saw." For a long moment, the shadow said nothing. Then, slowly, its shape shifted. Images began to form within it, visions of stars collapsing, civilizations tearing themselves apart, voices screaming for mercy. "I saw them break," it said, voice cracking. "I saw the pain of every world. So much sorrow. I wanted to make it stop. I wanted peace." Lyra's light softened. "You didn't want silence. You wanted healing." The eclipser's voice faltered. I only knew one way." Lyra extended her hand, her light reaching toward the darkness. "Then let's find another way, together." The shadow hesitated. Its form wavered between dark and light. Then slowly it reached back. When their hands touched, a wave of energy rippled through the universe. The light did not destroy the darkness. The darkness did not consume the light. Instead, they blended, two halves of the same truth. Where once the stars had burned too brightly or too dimly, now they glowed with balance. Their whispers carried both joy and sorrow, memory and peace. The stars sang again, but this time, their song was complete. Lyra turned to the eclipser, now transformed into a being of twilight glow. "You see? The universe doesn't have to forget to be at peace." The eclipser nodded slowly. "And you have given it that choice." The first whisperer appeared beside them, her voice filled with awe. "The song of remembering has become the symphony of balance." Lyra smiled. "Then maybe now, the universe can truly rest and still remember." Far across the galaxies, life began to stir in harmony. Planets no longer feared the silence. Stars burned with steady grace. And on Lyra's home world, Elden looked up at the night sky, now glowing with both gold and silver light, half warmth, half calm. He whispered softly, "The universe is listening again." And this time, the stars answered in two voices, light and shadow, singing as one. The universe had changed. Where there had once been silence and forgetting, now there was balance, light and shadow intertwined in a gentle rhythm. The galaxies no longer wept alone in the dark. They sang together, their voices rising and falling like waves on an eternal ocean. The stars whispered again, but not in pain or loneliness. Their whispers were now songs of remembrance, of love, sorrow, and rebirth. Every name that Lyra had written in her glowing journal became a note in that song. Every forgotten soul now shimmered as a star somewhere in the endless night. And in the heart of that new universe, Lyra's spirit drifted, no longer bound by body or time. She was everywhere and nowhere. She was the light that guided travelers across the cosmos, and the quiet voice that comforted the lonely when they looked up at the stars. She had become the eternal listener. From within the sea of memory, Lyra watched the newborn light flow through the galaxies. The first whisperer stood beside her, radiant as ever, her form now whole. The eclipser hovered near them, no longer a creature of destruction, but a guardian of calm and silence, ensuring the stars rested between their songs. Lyra smiled softly. "It's beautiful," she said. The whisper nodded. "You gave the universe back its voice. It will never be forgotten again." "And you?" Lyra asked. "What will you do now?" The whisperer looked up at the stars, her eyes glimmering. "My task is complete. The song belongs to you now, Lyra. You are the last whisper and the first memory." Lyra looked surprised. "But I'm no one special. I was just a girl who listened." The whisperer smiled gently. "That's why you were chosen. The universe always finds its savior in the quietest hearts." She stepped forward and placed her hand over Lyra's chest. "Your heart beats in every star now. When someone looks up and listens, they will hear your name in the starlight. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. I'll keep listening forever. And we will keep singing, said the whisper. With a warm smile, the first whisperer began to fade, her light merging with the stars until she became one with the song once more. The eclipser bowed its head and drifted into the spaces between galaxies, where silence was needed. Lyra was alone, but not lonely. She felt the hum of the cosmos around her, gentle and full of life. 1,000 years passed, then 1,000,000, and still, the song of the stars continued. New worlds formed. New civilizations rose under the light Lyra had helped restore. On one small blue planet at the edge of a spiral galaxy, beings looked up at the sky and wondered why the stars sometimes whispered when the night was quiet. A child stood beneath that starlit sky one evening, curious and bright-eyed. The child's name was Ira, and like Lyra once had, she loved the silence between the stars. Her grandmother often told her stories. Long ago, she said, the stars forgot our names. But a listener, someone who heard their whispers, reminded them who we are. Ira smiled. And now they whisper again? The grandmother nodded. Yes. They whisper for all of us. And if you listen closely, you might hear them call your name. That night, Ira lay on the grass and stared up. The stars pulsed faintly, as if winking at her. She closed her eyes and listened. At first, there was nothing, only the wind. Then softly came a whisper, a voice, gentle and familiar, like the universe breathing. Ira. Her heart leapt. She sat up quickly, eyes wide. Who said that? The voice answered, faint but full of warmth. I am Lyra. I listen still. Ira's eyes filled with wonder. Lyra, I've heard that name before. The voice smiled through the starlight. It's the name the stars remember. And now they remember yours too. Ira lay back again, staring up at the sky, her heart filled with a strange peace. For the first time, she understood what her grandmother meant. The stars weren't silent at all. They were alive, full of voices from long ago, whispering the names of everyone who had ever lived, loved, and dreamed. Across the galaxies, the song of remembering spread. It became a rhythm that pulsed through everything, through planets, through oceans, through hearts. Every life, every thought, every word became part of that eternal harmony. And though time moved on, though civilizations rose and fell, one truth remained. The universe never forgot again. Somewhere in the sea of memory, where light and shadow danced together, Lyra watched it all. She no longer spoke aloud, for her voice was part of everything now. But sometimes, when a child looked up at the stars and listened with a quiet heart, Lyra's whisper reached them. Don't stop listening. As long as someone listens, the stars will never forget. And so the stars kept whispering, softly, endlessly, telling the names of those who came before, and those who were yet to come. The universe no longer slept. It dreamed awake. And within every dream, a single voice echoed forever. We remember.